The dust swirled around her bare feet as they dragged her into the center of Oro Blanco's town square. And Victoria Ashford knew in that moment that shame had a color, a texture, a weight that pressed against her chest until she could barely breathe. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the small Arizona mining town, casting harsh shadows across the wooden buildings that lined the dusty street. It was June of 1878, and the heat shimmered off the packed earth in visible waves. Victoria's dark hair hung loose around her shoulders, tangled and wild, and the torn fabric of her dress barely clung to her frame. She tried to hold the ripped bodice together with trembling hands, but Mayor Hiram Caldwell seized her wrist and yanked it away, exposing her undergarments to the growing crowd. "Let them see what kind of woman walks among us," Caldwell bellowed, his face red and sweating beneath his wide-brimmed hat. "Let them see the harlot who tried to seduce an honest married man." Victoria's throat constricted. She wanted to scream that it was a lie, that Thomas Caldwell, the mayor's own son, had cornered her in the back room of the general store where she worked, had torn her dress when she fought him off, had struck her across the face when she threatened to tell. But who would believe the word of an orphan shop girl against the mayor's golden boy? The crowd pressed closer, their faces a mixture of disgust, curiosity, and cruel pleasure. Women she had known for years turned their backs. Men leered openly. Someone threw a clod of dirt that struck her shoulder, and laughter rippled through the assembly. "Strip her," someone shouted. "Let's see what she was offering." Victoria's vision blurred with tears. She had lived in Oro Blanco for 3 years, ever since the fever took her parents and left her alone at 19. She had worked hard, kept to herself, attended church every Sunday. And now, in one terrible afternoon, everything was being torn away. Mayor Caldwell reached for her shoulder, his fingers digging into her skin. Victoria closed her eyes and prayed for the earth to open and swallow her whole. Then a voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. "Step away from her." The authority in those 4 words made even the mayor pause. Victoria opened her eyes to see a tall figure moving through the crowd, which parted before him like water before the prow of a ship. She had seen him around town, the quiet cowboy who kept to himself, who worked the small ranch on the outskirts of town. Vincent Ashford. No relation, though they shared a surname, which had always struck her as an odd coincidence in a town this small. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of sage brush after rain. A worn hat shadowed his face, and dust covered his clothes from what must have been a long ride. His hand rested on the revolver at his hip, not threatening, but present. "This is none of your concern, Ashford," the mayor sputtered. "This woman is a menace to decent society." Vincent stopped a few feet away, his gaze moving slowly from the mayor to Victoria. When their eyes met, she saw something flicker across his face, recognition perhaps, or maybe understanding. He had always nodded politely when they passed on the street, had once helped her carry a heavy crate into the store, but they had never truly spoken. "What did she do?" Vincent asked, his voice calm and level. "She threw herself at my son, tried to compromise him in the store. Tore her own dress to make it look like he forced himself on her. Thomas is a good Christian boy, engaged to be married. This Jezebel tried to ruin him." Vincent's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He looked at Victoria again, really looked at her. She could see him taking in the bruise forming on her cheekbone, the defensive cuts on her palms, the terror in her eyes. "That true?" he asked her directly. Victoria's voice came out as barely a whisper. "No, he attacked me. I fought him off." "She is lying." Thomas Caldwell pushed forward from the crowd, his handsome face arranged in an expression of wounded innocence. I went to get supplies and found her waiting for me, her dress already torn. She said if I did not give her money, she would tell people I had ruined her. It was a clever lie, Victoria realized with despair. It explained the torn dress and turned her from victim to villain. She opened her mouth to protest, but what could she say? It was her word against his, and his family owned half the town. Vincent studied Thomas for a long moment, then looked back at Victoria. Something in his expression changed, hardened. "Well then," Vincent said slowly, unbuttoning his long duster coat, "I suppose we all have to decide who we believe." In one smooth motion, he pulled off the coat and stepped forward, draping it around Victoria's shoulders. The heavy fabric enveloped her, warm from his body heat, smelling of leather and sage and safety. He fastened the top buttons with steady fingers, covering her torn dress completely. "What are you doing?" the mayor demanded. Vincent turned to face the crowd, positioning himself slightly in front of Victoria. "I am choosing to believe that a woman who has worked honest for 3 years, who tends her little garden behind Mrs. Henderson's boarding house, who brings food to old Jeremiah when he is too sick to cook, is not suddenly a liar and a seductress." "You do not know what you are talking about," Thomas said, but there was an edge of panic in his voice now. "I know that men have been blaming women for their own sins since time began," Vincent replied. "I know that it takes a special kind of coward to attack a woman and then destroy her name when she refuses him." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I also know that your father owns the bank, the hotel, and the largest mine in the county. That gives you a lot of power in this town, makes people afraid to speak against you." "How dare you?" Mayor Caldwell spluttered. "I dare because I answer to no one in this town," Vincent said quietly. "My ranch is small, but it is mine. You hold no debt over my head. You cannot hurt me." He glanced at Victoria, and something in his gray-green eyes made her heart skip. "So I can speak truth when others cannot." The crowd murmured, some nodding, others frowning. The spell of mob mentality was breaking, reason seeping back in. Vincent held out his hand to Victoria. "Walk with me home." Those 4 words, simple and clean, cut through the nightmare, an offering, an escape, a choice. Victoria stared at his outstretched hand, calloused and strong, steady as stone. She had no reason to trust him beyond instinct, but instinct was all she had left. She placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and sure, and he drew her forward, through the crowd that reluctantly parted. Mayor Caldwell made to grab her arm, but Vincent shifted his body, blocking the motion without releasing her hand. "She has to answer for her lies," Caldwell insisted. "If there are charges to bring them proper through the law," Vincent said. "Not through a mob. I am the law in this town." "No, sir, you are the mayor. The law is the law, and last I checked, it requires evidence and testimony, not just accusations and public humiliation." Vincent kept walking, keeping Victoria close to his side, his body between her and the hostile crowd. "Anyone who wants to continue this can find me at my ranch, but if you come for her, you come through me." They walked in silence down the dusty Main Street, past the saloon and the church, past the boarding house where Victoria rented a small room. She was dimly aware of eyes watching from windows, of whispers following in their wake, but Vincent's hand in hers was an anchor keeping her from being swept away by the storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. When they finally reached the edge of town where the buildings gave way to open land, Vincent slowed but did not release her hand. His ranch lay about a mile further, a modest spread with a small house, a barn, and good grazing land for his cattle. "Where would you like me to take you?" he asked gently. "Your boarding house, my ranch, Somewhere else, Victoria's voice shook when she finally spoke. I cannot go back to the boarding house. Mrs. Henderson will have heard by now. She will not want me there. My ranch, then, Vincent said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. You can stay as long as you need. You do not even know me. I know enough. He looked at her, his eyes serious. I know you work hard. I know you are kind. I know you told the truth back there. How can you be sure? Because I saw Thomas Caldwell follow you into that store, Vincent said quietly. I was across the street, checking on a harness order. I saw the look on his face. I should have followed, should have stayed close. I am sorry I did not. The words struck Victoria like a physical blow. Someone had seen. Someone believed her. The tears she had been holding back finally spilled over, and she stopped walking, her body shaking with silent sobs. Without hesitation, Vincent pulled her into his arms, holding her while she cried into his chest, while 3 years of loneliness and today's terror poured out of her. You are safe now, he murmured into her hair. I promise you are safe. They stood there in the fading light, a cowboy and a shop girl, 2 people who barely knew each other, bound together by chance and choice. When Victoria finally lifted her head, Vincent produced a clean handkerchief from his pocket and gently wiped her face. Can you walk a bit more? He asked. We should get you out of sight before dark. She nodded, and they continued down the dusty road, hands still joined, as the sun painted the Arizona sky in shades of orange and gold. Vincent's ranch was small but well kept, the house a simple 2-room structure with a front porch that offered a view of the surrounding hills. He led her inside, lighting a lamp against the gathering darkness. The main room held a table, 2 chairs, a wood stove, and a few shelves with supplies. A door on the far wall led to what she assumed was a bedroom. You can have the bedroom, Vincent said, already moving toward it. I will sleep out here. I cannot take your bed, Victoria protested. Yes, you can, and you will. His tone brooked no argument, but his eyes were kind. You have been through hell today. You need rest, and you need privacy. He disappeared into the bedroom and emerged a moment later with a quilt and a pillow, which he deposited on the floor by the stove. Then he rummaged in a trunk and produced a clean shirt and trousers. These will be too big, but they are clean and whole, he said, handing them to her. There is a basin and pitcher in the bedroom, fresh water. Take your time. Victoria accepted the clothes, clutching them to her chest. Why are you doing this? You could lose everything going against the mayor. Vincent was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. My father was a hard man, but he taught me 2 things worth remembering. The first was that a man who will not stand up for what is right when it costs him nothing will never stand up when it costs him everything. The second was that the measure of a person is not what they do when others are watching, but what they do when no one would ever know. People will talk, Victoria said. They will say terrible things about me being here. Let them talk. Words are just wind. He met her eyes. You have nowhere else to go tonight, and I will not leave you to the mercy of that town. Tomorrow we can figure out what comes next. Tonight you are safe. That is all that matters. Victoria nodded slowly, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She retreated to the bedroom, closing the door behind her. The room was sparse but clean, dominated by a sturdy bed covered with a faded quilt. A small window looked out over the darkening landscape. She poured water into the basin and washed her face and hands, scrubbing away the dust and tears and the memory of cruel hands grabbing at her. She changed into Vincent's shirt and trousers, rolling up the sleeves and cuffs. The fabric was soft from many washings and still held the faint scent of him. She caught her reflection in the small mirror on the wall and barely recognized herself, hair wild, eyes haunted, swimming in a man's clothes. But she was covered, she was clean, and she was safe. When she emerged from the bedroom, Vincent had a pot of coffee brewing on the stove and was slicing bread and cheese. He glanced up and something flickered across his face, gone too quickly for her to name. "Sit," he said, gesturing to one of the chairs. "When did you last eat?" Victoria tried to remember. Breakfast had been hours ago, a lifetime ago. "This morning." He nodded and prepared a simple meal, setting a plate before her with bread, cheese, and some cold beef. He poured coffee into 2 tin cups and sat across from her, but did not eat himself. "You should eat too," Victoria said. "I will, once you have taken the edge off your hunger. Go on." She ate slowly, surprised by how ravenous she was. The food was simple but good, and the hot coffee helped chase away the chill that had settled into her bones despite the warm evening. Vincent watched her quietly, then finally began to eat himself. "What will happen now?" Victoria asked when the silence grew too heavy. "The mayor will not let this go." "Probably not," Vincent agreed, "but he will have to be careful. Making accusations in the heat of the moment in front of a mob is one thing. Bringing formal charges is another. He would need evidence, witnesses. And if he pushes too hard, people might start asking questions he does not want answered." "You mean about his son?" "Thomas Caldwell has a reputation if you know where to listen. There have been rumors before, whispers of young women who left town suddenly, families who moved away. Nothing proven, nothing concrete, but smoke usually means fire." Victoria set down her cup with trembling hands. "Why has no one stopped him?" "Because his father has power, and people are afraid." Vincent's jaw tightened. "And because this world is hard on women, harder than it has any right to be. Men can destroy a woman's reputation with a word, but a woman who speaks against a man is called a liar and worse." "You do not think that way." "My mother was widowed young," Vincent said quietly. "Raised me and my sister alone after my father died in a stampede. I saw how people treated her, the propositions she had to turn down, the way men thought she was available for the taking just because she had no husband to protect her. She was strong, though, taught me to see people for who they are, not what society says they should be." "Where is she now?" "She passed 4 years ago. Fever took her quick." His voice held old grief, well worn but still present. "My sister married a good man and moved to California. I settled here because the land spoke to me, quiet and honest. I am sorry about your mother." "Thank you." "I am sorry you have no family to turn to now." Victoria looked down at her hands. "My parents were good people. My father was a clerk. My mother took in sewing. We were not wealthy, but we were happy. When the fever came through, it took them both within a week of each other. I was alone at 19 with nothing but a few possessions and the money from selling our small house. I came here because I heard there was work, that it was a growing town." "You have done well for yourself," Vincent said. "Mrs. Henderson says you are the best worker she has ever had at the store. Never late, never short in the till, always pleasant to customers. You asked about me." A hint of color touched his cheeks, visible even in the lamplight. "I may have made inquiries. After I saw you a few times, I was curious." Despite everything, Victoria felt a flutter of something warm in her chest. "Why?" Vincent held her gaze. "Because you were beautiful and kind, and you had a way of smiling at customers that made them smile back, even old cranks like Jeremiah Smith. Because you tended that little garden like each plant was precious. Because I am a lonely man on a lonely ranch, and sometimes when I came to town, seeing you was the best part of my day." The honesty in his words took her breath away. They barely knew each other, had exchanged perhaps a dozen words before today, and yet here in the lamplight of his small house, something was shifting between them, something fragile and true. "I noticed you too," Victoria admitted softly. The quiet cowboy who always tipped his hat to ladies, who paid his bills on time, who once helped Mrs. Chen carry her supplies when her grandson was sick. I thought you seemed different from other men in town. Different how? Decent, she said simply. Like you saw people instead of just looking through them. They sat in companionable silence, the night deepening around them. Somewhere outside, a coyote howled, long and lonesome. Vincent finally rose and collected their plates. You should get some rest, he said. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, but tonight you need sleep. Victoria stood, suddenly awkward. Thank you, Vincent, for everything. I do not know how I can ever repay you. You do not owe me anything. I did what any decent person should do. But most people would not have. Most people did not. He stepped closer, and in the warm glow of the lamp she could see the sincerity in his eyes. Then I am glad I am not most people. She wanted to say more, to somehow express the gratitude and confusion and strange new feeling growing in her chest, but words failed her. Instead, she reached out and squeezed his hand once, quick and light, then retreated to the bedroom before her emotions could overwhelm her again. The bed was comfortable, more comfortable than her narrow cot at the boarding house. Victoria lay in the darkness, listening to the sounds of Vincent settling down in the main room, the creak of floorboards, the rustle of the quilt. Despite the trauma of the day, despite the uncertainty of tomorrow, she felt safe for the first time in hours. Protected not by walls or locks, but by the presence of a good man who had chosen to stand beside her when the whole world turned away. Sleep came slowly, bringing dreams of dust and shouting that gradually gave way to images of sage-colored eyes and a steady hand reaching for hers. She woke to the smell of coffee and bacon frying. Sunlight streamed through the window, painting golden squares on the wooden floor. For a moment, Victoria could not remember where she was, and then it all came rushing back. The attack, the town square, Vincent's coat around her shoulders, his voice saying, "Walk with me home." She dressed quickly in his borrowed clothes and emerged to find him at the stove, cooking breakfast. He had already been outside. She could tell from the fresh dust on his boots and the damp hair that suggested he had washed at the pump. "Morning," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "I hope I did not wake you." "No, I should have been up earlier." "I have taken your bed and slept late while you worked. You needed rest. Sit down, breakfast is almost ready." She obeyed, pouring herself coffee from the pot. Vincent served up plates of bacon, eggs, and fried potatoes, simple fare that tasted like a feast. They ate together as morning light filled the room, and Victoria marveled at how natural it felt, like they had shared 100 such mornings instead of just one night under the same roof. "I have been thinking," Vincent said, setting down his fork, "about what you should do next." Victoria's stomach tightened. "I need to find work, another place to stay, maybe in another town." "You could do that," Vincent agreed, "or you could stay here. Here, I could use help on the ranch. The garden needs tending, the chickens need managing, there is mending and cooking and 100 other tasks. I can pay you a wage, not much but fair. You would have a roof over your head and honest work." "Vincent, I cannot. People will talk. They already think the worst of me. If I stay here with you, unmarried and unchaperoned, they will say I am your mistress. Then we get married." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and perfect. Victoria stared at him, certain she had misheard. "What?" Vincent met her eyes steadily. "Marry me. It would give you protection, respectability, a home. The mayor could not touch you as my wife, and I would be honored to have you. You cannot be serious, we barely know each other. I know enough. I know you are brave and kind and honest. I know you deserve better than what this world has given you. I know that when I saw you in that town square, something in me recognized something in you." He paused, choosing his words carefully. I am not promising you grand romance or passionate declarations. What I am offering is partnership, safety, and the chance to build something together. We can learn each other as we go. Many marriages start with less. Victoria's heart pounded. It was insane, marrying a man she barely knew to escape the consequences of another man's violence. And yet, what other option did she have? Return to town and face the scorn and judgment. Flee to another place where she knew no one and start over with nothing. You deserve more than a wife you take out of pity, she said quietly. It is not pity. Vincent leaned forward, his expression intense. I have been alone for a long time, Victoria. I am tired of coming home to an empty house, of eating meals in silence, of having no one to share the small joys and struggles of each day. I am not a young man anymore. I am 27 and settled in my ways. I figured I would probably stay alone. But then yesterday, when I saw you there, when I took your hand, something shifted. It felt right. It felt like maybe this was meant to happen. That is not love, Victoria whispered. No, Vincent agreed, but it could grow into love if we let it. People used to marry for all sorts of reasons besides romantic love. They married for companionship, for partnership, to build a life together. Love came later, or it did not, but they made their way regardless. I am not asking you to pretend feelings you do not have. I am asking you to consider a practical solution that might benefit us both. Victoria stood and walked to the window, staring out at the Arizona landscape, all gold and red and endless sky. Her practical mind knew he was right. Marriage would protect her, give her a place in the world again. And Vincent was a good man, the kind of man she could respect, maybe even grow to care for deeply. But her heart ached with the unfairness of it all. She had once dreamed of marrying for love, of being courted properly, of choosing her own path. Instead, she was backed into a corner, forced to make decisions out of desperation. What if I say no? She asked. Then I will help you get to another town, give you money for a fresh start, and wish you well. I will not force this on you, Victoria. The choice is yours. She turned to face him. He stood by the table, hat in hand, looking at her with those steady gray-green eyes. There was no pressure in his gaze, no manipulation, just patient waiting. If I married you, she said slowly, testing the words, what would you expect of me? Honesty, partnership, and your best effort at making a life together. I would not force myself on you. You would have time to adjust, to feel comfortable. We would take things slowly. You would not claim your rights as a husband. Vincent's expression softened. Victoria, after what you went through yesterday, I would not dream of pushing myself on you. When and if anything happens between us, it will be because you want it, not because you feel obligated. You have my word on that. The sincerity in his voice undid something in her chest. She had expected men to always want one thing, to take what they felt entitled to. But here was Vincent, offering her safety without strings, respect without demands. Can I think about it? She asked. Take all the time you need. You are welcome here regardless of your decision. They spent the rest of the morning in relative quiet. Vincent went out to tend his cattle, leaving Victoria alone in the house. She washed the breakfast dishes, swept the floors, tried to impose some order on her chaotic thoughts. Through the window she could see him working, mending a section of fence with steady, practiced movements. She thought about her options, really thought them through. She could leave, start over somewhere else. But she had no references now, no one willing to vouch for her character. Word of the incident would spread through the territory. Other towns would hear. She would always be the woman accused of seducing the mayor's son, regardless of the truth. She could stay here as Vincent's employee, but that would invite scandal without the protection of marriage. People would assume the worst anyway, but at least as his wife she would have legal standing, a claim to respectability. And then there was Vincent himself. She barely knew him, yet he had shown her more kindness in one day than most people had shown her in a lifetime. He was honest, hardworking, decent. Could she do worse than marrying such a man? Many women married for far less promising reasons, but marriage was permanent, binding. It meant tying her life to his, sharing his bed eventually, bearing his children perhaps. Could she do that with a man she did not love? Yet even as she asked herself the question, she remembered the feeling of his hand in hers, the safety of his coat around her shoulders, the steadiness of his presence. Maybe love could grow from such things. Maybe respect and kindness were better foundations than passion anyway. By the time Vincent came in for the midday meal, Victoria had made her decision. "Yes," she said as he washed his hands at the basin. "I will marry you." He turned to look at her, water dripping from his fingers. "You are sure?" "I am sure that I trust you, that I have no better option, and that I think we could build something good together if we both try. That is enough for me right now." Vincent dried his hands slowly, then crossed the room to stand before her. "I will do my best to be a good husband to you, Victoria. I will protect you, provide for you, and treat you with respect. You have my word. And I will do my best to be a good wife, a good partner." He held out his hand, and she took it, sealing their bargain with a handshake that felt more binding than any legal document. His palm was warm and calloused against hers, and when he smiled, it transformed his serious face into something almost beautiful. "We should go to town today, to the church," Vincent said. "The sooner we are married, the sooner you are protected. Unless you want to wait. No, let us do it quickly, before I lose my nerve." They saddled Vincent's horse and his spare mare and rode toward Oro Blanco in the afternoon heat. Victoria wore Vincent's clothes still, having nothing else, and she kept his coat around her despite the temperature, needing the shield it provided. As they approached the town, her anxiety grew. Vincent must have sensed it because he reached over and squeezed her hand. "I am with you," he said simply. "Whatever happens, I am with you." They rode straight to the small white church at the edge of town. Reverend Samuel Mitchell was in the garden, tending roses. He looked up at their approach, his weathered face creasing with surprise. "Vincent, Miss Foster." "What brings you here?" "We want to get married, Reverend," Vincent said, dismounting and helping Victoria down. "Today, if possible." The Reverend's eyebrows shot up. "Today? But there are conventions, protocols, bans to be posted, arrangements to be made." "We are aware, but our situation is unusual. I am sure you heard about the incident yesterday in the town square." The Reverend's expression grew somber. "I did. Terrible business. I wanted to intervene, but by the time I arrived, you had already taken Miss Foster away." He looked at Victoria with kind eyes. "How are you, my dear?" "I am managing, thank you, Reverend." "I want to marry her to give her my name and protection," Vincent said. "I know it is fast, but I believe it is right. Will you perform the ceremony?" Reverend Mitchell studied them both for a long moment. He was a good man, Victoria knew, who often preached about mercy and justice. She held her breath, waiting for his answer. "Come inside," he said finally. "Let us talk." They followed him into the cool interior of the church, sitting in the front pew while the Reverend took a seat beside them. Light filtered through the simple glass windows, painting everything in shades of gold. "Vincent, you are a good man," the Reverend began. "But marriage is a sacred covenant, not to be entered into lightly or used as a shield against scandal." "I understand that, Reverend. This is not about scandal. This is about two people choosing to build a life together. You barely know each other. We know enough. My own parents married after knowing each other for 3 weeks. They had 30 good years together before my father passed. Sometimes you do not need time, you just need truth." The Reverend turned to Victoria. "And you, child, are you entering this marriage freely, or do you feel pressured by circumstances?" Victoria chose her words carefully. "I feel many things, Reverend. Fear about my future, gratitude to Vincent for his kindness, uncertainty about what lies ahead. But I am choosing this freely. He has made me no false promises, offered no flowery speeches. He has been honest about what he can give and what he expects. That is more than many women get. You understand that marriage is permanent in the eyes of God." "I do." "And Vincent, do you promise to cherish and care for Victoria in plenty and in want, in joy and in sorrow, for all your days?" "I do, Reverend. I promise it before God and on my honor." The Reverend was quiet for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well. I will perform the ceremony. But I want you both to understand what you are taking on. Marriage is work, daily work. It requires patience, forgiveness, and constant choosing of each other even when things are hard. Can you commit to that?" "Yes," they said together, and Victoria felt the weight of that word, the promise contained in that single syllable. "Then let us proceed. Do you have rings?" Vincent shook his head. "I have my mother's wedding ring at the ranch. We can collect it later." "That will do. We need witnesses." "Wait here." The Reverend left and returned a few minutes later with his wife Martha, a plump woman with kind eyes, and old Jeremiah Smith, the hermit who lived on the edge of town. Jeremiah looked confused but pleased to be included. "Martha, Jeremiah, these two young people wish to be married. Will you stand as witnesses?" "Of course," Martha said, beaming. "Oh, how lovely." Jeremiah just nodded, clutching his battered hat. They gathered before the simple altar, Vincent and Victoria standing side by side while Reverend Mitchell opened his well-worn Bible. The ceremony was short and simple, the traditional words ringing out in the quiet church. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the sight of God and these witnesses to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." Victoria listened to the words wash over her, solemn and binding. When it came time to speak her vows, her voice shook but held steady. "I, Victoria Foster, take you, Vincent Ashford, to be my wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part." Vincent's voice was strong and sure as he repeated his vows, his eyes never leaving hers. "I, Vincent Ashford, take you, Victoria Foster, to be my wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part. By the power vested in me by the territory of Arizona and by God Almighty, I pronounce you husband and wife. Vincent, you may kiss your bride." Vincent hesitated, clearly remembering his promise not to push her. Victoria made the decision for both of them, rising on her toes and pressing a soft, brief kiss to his lips. It was chaste and quick, but it sealed their covenant, made them truly married in the eyes of God and man. Martha clapped delightedly, and even Jeremiah smiled. The Reverend recorded the marriage in the church register, and they all signed as witnesses. Just like that, Victoria Foster became Victoria Ashford, a married woman with a new name and a new life. As they stepped out of the church into the bright afternoon, Vincent offered her his arm. "Well, Mrs. Ashford, shall we go home, Mrs. Ashford?" The name felt strange and new and terrifying and wonderful all at once. "Yes, let us go home." They were mounting their horses when Mayor Caldwell appeared, red-faced and furious, with his son trailing behind. "What is this I hear about you two getting married?" he demanded. "It is true," Vincent said calmly. "Victoria is my wife now. The Reverend performed the ceremony not 10 minutes ago. This is outrageous. That woman is a known seductress. She should be run out of town, not married to one of our citizens. That woman is my wife, and you will speak of her with respect or not at all." Vincent's voice was quiet but edged with steel. "She has bewitched you somehow. Once you come to your senses, you will regret this hasty decision." "The only thing I regret is not intervening sooner yesterday when your son attacked her." Thomas Caldwell stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. "I told you, she threw herself at me." "You are a liar," Vincent said flatly. "I saw you follow her into that store. I saw the look on your face. You thought no one was watching, but I was. And if you ever come near my wife again, if you even speak her name, you will answer to me." "Is that clear?" The threat hung in the air, unambiguous. Thomas paled and stepped back. Mayor Caldwell sputtered, "You cannot threaten my son." "That was not a threat. It was a promise. Now if you will excuse us, my wife and I are going home." They rode away, leaving the mayor and his son staring after them. Victoria's heart pounded, but Vincent seemed utterly calm, as if he had done nothing more remarkable than comment on the weather. "You are not afraid," she said as they left town behind. "Of them? No. Men like that are only dangerous when their victims are alone and helpless. You are neither any more. Because I am married to you. Because you are strong and now you have someone standing beside you. That makes all the difference." They rode in companionable silence, the afternoon sun warm on their backs. Victoria tried to process everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. Yesterday, she had been a shop girl with a quiet life. Today, she was a married woman, wife to a cowboy she barely knew. It was too much to absorb all at once. When they reached the ranch, Vincent helped her dismount and then stood looking at her with an expression she could not quite read. "I know this is not how you imagined your wedding day," he said. "No fancy dress, no celebration, no romance. I am sorry for that. You have nothing to apologize for. You saved me, Vincent. You gave me a future when I had none. Still, every woman deserves to feel special on her wedding day. Maybe we can make up for it, in small ways." He disappeared into the barn and returned a few minutes later with a handful of wildflowers, probably picked from the field near the creek. They were simple blooms, nothing exotic, but he presented them with such sincerity that Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "Every bride should have flowers," he said simply. She took them, bringing them to her nose and breathing in their faint, sweet scent. "Thank you. They are perfect." That evening they ate a simple dinner together, husband and wife now, and the weight of those titles sat between them, new and strange. After the dishes were cleaned, an awkward silence fell. "I should go to bed," Victoria said finally. "It has been a long day, of course. I will be out here if you need anything." She paused at the bedroom door. "Vincent, we are married now. You do not have to sleep on the floor." He looked at her carefully. "I made you a promise. I meant it. I know, and I appreciate that. But there is a difference between claiming your rights as a husband and simply sharing a bed. It is a large bed. We could both fit, with space between. It seems silly for you to sleep on the floor in your own house." "Are you sure?" "I am sure that you are my husband now, and I trust you. We can figure the rest out as we go." Something warm kindled in Vincent's eyes. "All right then. Thank you." That night they lay side by side in the darkness, a careful space between them. Victoria stared at the ceiling, hyper-aware of Vincent's presence, the sound of his breathing, the warmth radiating from his body. It felt impossibly intimate and yet completely safe. "Victoria," Vincent's voice came soft through the darkness. "Yes, I will try to make you happy. I know I am not much, just a simple rancher with modest means, but I will try." She rolled to face him, though she could barely make out his features in the dark. "You are a good man, Vincent Ashford. That is worth more than all the wealth in the world." She heard the smile in his voice when he replied, "Get some rest, wife. Tomorrow we start our life together in earnest. Good night, husband." She fell asleep to the steady rhythm of his breathing, feeling safer than she had in years. The days that followed fell into a gentle rhythm. Victoria learned the routines of ranch life, tending the vegetable garden, managing the chickens, cooking meals, and mending clothes. Vincent worked the cattle and handled the heavier labor, but they often worked side by side, finding excuses to be near each other. They talked as they worked, sharing stories of their childhoods, their hopes, their fears. Victoria learned that Vincent was terrified of snakes, that his favorite food was apple pie, that he could play the harmonica passably well. He learned that she could whistle any tune after hearing it once, that she had always wanted to learn to read better, that thunderstorms thrilled rather than frightened her. Each night they lay in the same bed, the space between them gradually shrinking as comfort replaced awkwardness. Vincent never pushed, never took liberties, but sometimes in the morning Victoria would wake to find their hands had found each other in sleep, fingers loosely entwined. 3 weeks after their wedding they went to town for supplies. Victoria wore her one good dress, carefully cleaned and mended. She held her head high as they walked through the streets, Vincent's steady presence at her side. People stared and whispered, but no one confronted them directly. Victoria saw Reverend Mitchell, who smiled and nodded. She saw Mrs. Chen, who gave her a tiny, encouraging wave. But she also saw women she had thought were friends turn away, saw men smirk and nudge each other. At the general store, a new clerk she did not recognize helped them gather their supplies. Victoria felt a pang seeing the back room where everything had gone so wrong, but Vincent's hand found the small of her back, grounding her. As they were loading their purchases onto the wagon, Thomas Caldwell appeared, clearly having had too much to drink even though it was barely noon. "Well, if it is not the happy couple," he slurred. "Congratulations on your marriage, Ashford. I hope you enjoy my leftovers." Vincent went very still, and Victoria felt the tension radiating off him. Before he could respond, she stepped forward. "You are a coward and a liar, Thomas Caldwell," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the street. "You attacked me because you thought I had no one to protect me, no one who would believe my word against yours. You were wrong. And now everyone can see what you truly are, a pathetic drunk who preys on women weaker than himself." Thomas lurched forward, hand raising as if to strike her. Vincent moved like lightning, catching his wrist and twisting, forcing Thomas to his knees in the dust. "I believe I warned you about coming near my wife," Vincent said quietly. "Seems you did not listen." "Let me go," Thomas gasped with pleasure. Vincent released him and Thomas scrambled backward. "But understand this. Touch her, threaten her, even look at her wrong, and you and I will finish this in a way you will not enjoy. Your father's money and power mean nothing to me. Are we clear?" Thomas, perhaps seeing something in Vincent's eyes that truly frightened him, nodded and fled. A small crowd had gathered, watching the exchange. Vincent helped Victoria onto the wagon seat and climbed up beside her, taking the reins. As they pulled away, Victoria saw something unexpected. Mrs. Henderson, her former landlady, was standing in front of the boarding house. As their wagon passed, the old woman gave a firm nod of approval. And beside her, 2 other women Victoria barely knew did the same. Not everyone in Oro Blanco believed the lies, Victoria realized. Not everyone had turned against her. It was a small comfort, but a comfort nonetheless. On the ride home, Vincent was quiet, his jaw tight. When they reached the ranch and had unloaded the supplies, Victoria found him standing by the corral staring out at the hills. "Are you angry?" she asked, joining him. "Not at you, at him, at the whole rotten situation." At the fact that men like Thomas Caldwell face no consequences while women like you have to rebuild their entire lives. But I am rebuilding it, Victoria said. With your help. I have a home, a husband, a future. That is more than I could have hoped for a month ago. Vincent turned to look at her, his gray-green eyes intense. You deserve so much more than what I can give you. What do you think I want, Vincent? A mansion, fine clothes, servants. I want peace. I want safety. I want to wake up without fear. You have given me all of that. I want to give you happiness too. You do, she said softly. Every day in small ways. The way you bring me coffee in the morning. The way you fix the squeaky hinge on the chicken coop without me asking. The way you listen when I talk about my parents even though it makes me sad. Those things make me happy. He reached out hesitantly and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. It was the most deliberately intimate gesture he had made since their chaste wedding kiss. I am glad, he said quietly, because somewhere along the way your happiness became important to me. Very important. Victoria's breath caught. The space between them seemed charged suddenly, full of possibility. She could feel her heart beating faster, could see something shift in Vincent's expression. Victoria, he started, then stopped, seemingly unsure how to continue. Yes. May I kiss you? A real kiss this time, she nodded, not trusting her voice. Vincent cupped her face in his calloused hands, gentle as if she were made of glass, and slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, brought his lips to hers. The kiss was nothing like the quick peck at their wedding. This was thorough and deep and searching, a question and an answer all at once. Victoria felt something inside her unfurl like a flower toward the sun. She gripped the front of his shirt, pulling him closer, kissing him back with sudden fierce need. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. I am falling in love with you, he said, the words rough with emotion. I did not plan to, did not expect to, but I am. You should know that. Tears spilled down Victoria's cheeks, but for the first time in weeks they were happy tears. I am falling in love with you too, it terrifies me. Why? Because I never thought I could feel this way, especially not after everything that happened. I thought I was marrying you for protection, for practicality. But somewhere along the way it became real. You became essential. And that is terrifying because now I have so much to lose. Vincent kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips again, soft and reverent. You will not lose me. I promise you that. We are in this together for better or worse. Remember, till death do us part, Victoria whispered. Till death do us part, Vincent echoed. That night when they lay in bed, there was no space between them. Victoria curled into Vincent's side, her head on his chest, his arm around her shoulders. They talked quietly into the darkness, sharing dreams and fears, building the foundation of a real marriage. I want children someday, Victoria said. Not right away, but eventually. Is that something you want? I would love children, Vincent said, but only when you are ready. There is no rush. I think I would like a few years, just us, to learn each other, to build our life. Is that all right? That is more than all right. He pressed a kiss to her hair. We have time, Victoria. We have the rest of our lives. The summer passed into fall, and their love deepened with the changing seasons. Vincent taught Victoria to ride properly, and they would take evening rides through the Golden Hills, racing each other and laughing. Victoria taught Vincent to read better, sitting beside him in the evenings, patiently sounding out words from the few books they owned. They worked side by side, building their ranch, improving their small house. Vincent added a room, wanting more space for when they eventually had children. Victoria planted roses by the front porch, wanting beauty to balance the harsh landscape. Slowly, carefully, their marriage became whole in every sense. On a cool October night, 3 months after their wedding, Victoria reached for Vincent in the darkness, and he came to her with reverence and patience, making her first time gentle and right. Afterward, as they lay entwined, she cried again, but this time from joy, from the overwhelming sense of being cherished and safe and loved. "Are you all right?" Vincent asked anxiously, wiping her tears. "I am perfect," Victoria said. "I am exactly where I am supposed to be." As winter approached, they made another trip to town. Victoria noticed that attitudes had shifted subtly. More people nodded to her now. Mrs. Henderson invited her to tea, apologizing for believing the rumors without hearing Victoria's side. Mrs. Chen brought her preserves as a belated wedding gift. The mayor and his son kept their distance, and Victoria was grateful. She had no desire for confrontation, only peace. In the spring, Victoria discovered she was pregnant. She told Vincent on a warm April evening, watching anxiously for his reaction. His face went through a series of expressions: shock, wonder, and finally pure joy. He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing. "We are going to be parents," he said, setting her down carefully as if she might break. "I am going to be a father. Are you happy?" "I am overwhelmed." "I am terrified. I am happier than I have ever been in my life." They told Reverend Mitchell the news, and he blessed them, saying he had known their hasty marriage would work out. "I could see it in the way you looked at each other," he said. Even then, even at the very beginning, there was something there. Victoria's pregnancy was smooth, and Vincent was impossibly attentive, treating her like delicate porcelain. She finally had to tell him to stop hovering or she would go mad, and he laughed and backed off, though she still caught him watching her with protective concern. In December, as snow dusted the Arizona hills, Victoria went into labor. Vincent rode frantically for the midwife, Mrs. Henderson, who had delivered half the babies in Oro Blanco. The labor was long and difficult, and Vincent paced outside the bedroom, white-faced with worry. Finally, in the early hours of a cold December morning, their son was born, healthy and squalling. Mrs. Henderson brought the baby out to Vincent, placing the tiny bundle in his arms. "You have a son," she said, smiling. "And your wife is well, just exhausted." Vincent stared down at the small face, red and wrinkled and absolutely perfect. Tears streamed down his face unchecked. "A son," he whispered. "We have a son." He carried the baby into the bedroom where Victoria lay propped against pillows, exhausted but glowing. Vincent placed their son in her arms, and they both stared in wonder at the tiny person they had created. "What should we name him?" Victoria asked. "I was thinking Samuel, after the reverend who married us." "Samuel Mitchell Ashford." "Samuel," Victoria repeated, testing the name. "I like it. Samuel Ashford." The baby yawned, a tiny perfect motion, and they both laughed through their tears. In the years that followed, their family grew. 2 years after Samuel came Lily, with Victoria's dark hair and Vincent's gray-green eyes. 3 years after Lily came Thomas, a name Vincent insisted on to replace the dark associations it held, to give it new meaning. Their ranch prospered modestly. They would never be wealthy, but they had enough. More importantly, they had each other, and they had built something real and lasting from the ashes of tragedy. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Vincent took Victoria back to the spot in town where they had first joined hands, where he had said, "Walk with me home." The town square looked different now, newer buildings replacing old ones, different faces in the crowd. But the memory remained, seared into both their hearts. 10 years, Vincent said, holding both her hands. 10 years since the worst and best day of our lives. "The day that brought us together," Victoria agreed. "Do you ever regret it, marrying me so quickly, taking on my troubles?" "Not for a single moment. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Victoria Ashford. You and our children. You gave me a reason to come home every night, a reason to build and dream and hope. You saved me, Victoria said, as she had said so many times over the years. In every way a person can be saved. We saved each other, Vincent corrected, pulling her close. I was alone and lonely, going through the motions of living. You gave me purpose. You gave me love. You gave me a family. They kissed there in the town square, not caring who saw, not caring about propriety. They had earned their happiness, fought for it, built it from nothing. That evening they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the Arizona sky in shades of fire. Samuel, now 9, was helping his father with evening chores. 6-year-old Lily was in the garden, carefully watering her own small plot. 3-year-old Thomas toddled between them, trying to help everyone and mostly getting in the way. We should have another, Vincent said suddenly. Victoria looked at him in surprise. Another child, why not? We have room, we have love, I would not mind a larger family. Victoria smiled, placing a hand on her stomach. Well, that is fortunate because I am fairly certain we are already expecting. Vincent's eyes widened. Truly, truly. I was planning to tell you tonight. Happy anniversary, husband. He gathered her into his arms, careful of her belly, and held her close. I love you, he murmured into her hair. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Victoria replied. My protector, my partner, my home. Their 4th child, a daughter they named Hope, was born the following spring. And then, 2 years later, their youngest, another son they named David. As their children grew, Victoria and Vincent told them the story of how they met, edited for young ears but honest in its essentials. They taught their children about standing up for what was right, about protecting the vulnerable, about choosing love even when it was hard. Samuel grew into a serious young man who became a lawyer, fighting for justice for those who could not fight for themselves. Lily became a teacher, educating children throughout the territory. Thomas took over the ranch, expanding it and making it prosper. Hope became a doctor, one of the first women physicians in Arizona. And David became a minister, spreading the gospel of compassion and mercy. All 5 children married for love and built strong families of their own, giving Victoria and Vincent a house full of grandchildren who called them Nana and Papa, and climbed on their laps demanding stories. On their 30th anniversary, Victoria and Vincent sat on that same porch, now gray-haired and weathered by time but still deeply in love. Their children and grandchildren had thrown them a party, filling the ranch house with laughter and love. 30 years, Victoria marveled. It feels like yesterday and like forever all at once. Best 30 years of my life, Vincent said, taking her hand. Their fingers intertwined automatically, a gesture so familiar it was like breathing. You remember what you said to me that first day? Victoria asked. In the town square. Walk with me home. 4 simple words that changed everything. Vincent lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. I would say them again in a heartbeat. I would make the same choice every time. As would I. Choosing you was the best decision I ever made. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, watching their legacy run and play in the yard, their children's children, the future they had built from one moment of courage and compassion. Victoria thought back to that terrified girl in the town square, certain her life was over. She thought of the cowboy who had stepped forward when everyone else turned away, who had offered his coat and his hand and his name. She thought of all the moments between then and now, the struggles and joys, the ordinary days that had woven together into an extraordinary life. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For seeing me when I was invisible, for believing me when no one else would, for loving me when I felt unlovable. Vincent turned to face her, cupping her cheek with his weathered hand. You were never unlovable, Victoria. You were just waiting for someone who deserved you. And I found him, the best man I have ever known. The luckiest man alive, Vincent corrected. Lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time, lucky enough to recognize what was being offered. Lucky enough to convince you to take a chance on a simple cowboy. You were never simple. You were extraordinary. You still are. They kissed as the last light faded from the sky, a kiss that held 30 years of love and partnership and unwavering commitment. Around them, their family laughed and played, the fruit of their love, the legacy of one brave choice made on a dusty Arizona afternoon. As stars emerged in the darkening sky, Vincent pulled Victoria close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, right where it belonged. They had walked home together that first day, and they had been walking together ever since, through sunshine and storm, through joy and sorrow, through all the ordinary, extraordinary moments that make up a life. And they would keep walking together until their last breath, two souls joined by chance and bound by choice, forever grateful for the day a cowboy saw a woman shamed and decided to offer her his coat, his hand, and ultimately his heart, asking only that she walk with him home. The end.